folks, it's Stefan, back again with another episode of the Gamer's Companion to Music. You asked for it, and here it is, an episode all about Destiny's Year 2 expansion, The Taken King. The music in The Taken King is extremely different from Year 1, bringing about the dire and dark sense of impending destruction at the hands of Oryx, the Taken King. From the electronic sounds to the deep bass blasts to the melodic motif that finds its way into just about everything, the musical complexion of the Destiny universe completely changed in Year 2, right from the beginning. It goes to show that Destiny is a living, breathing universe, and as Guardians we are not in the time we used to be. I hope you're ready to become Ascendant. Let's explore what the Dreadnought had to offer us in Destiny's Year 2. The music for The Taken King was composed by most of the same team as Year 1, Michael Salvatore, C. Paul Johnson, and Sky Lewin. It's not very clear to me who exactly does which music, but I can tell you that they've put together a great score that's extremely different from Year 1, yet feels like it still fits the Destiny universe. The basic story of The Taken King is that Crota's father, Oryx, has come to the solar system to seek vengeance on you for killing his son. He comes in this huge ship called the Dreadnought, and we find out that he has the ability to take other beings and bend their will to his. These new enemies are called the Taken, and their visual skin changes significantly and their abilities are also enhanced. Your Guardian finds a way aboard the Dreadnought and into Oryx's Ascendant realm. Now remember, in Hive lore, these great Hive beings such as Oryx or Crota cannot be killed in our normal world. They hide their death in a different realm. It just turns out that Oryx's Ascendant realm is actually his own Dreadnought. The Calcified Fragments Grimoire really explain this well, and I'd highly recommend checking them out. We find a way to become Ascendant and finish off Oryx once and for all in the King's Fall raid, which has maybe the best music in the entire expansion. The first thing I need to mention is that Bungie has made a habit of pushing the major components of an expansion to the consoles about a week before the actual release. This helps to create some new things for Guardians to do to prepare, but when those components get pushed out, we all notice something very, very obvious. For Xbox One, the title splash image changed. In Year 1 it looks like this, and in Year 2 this is what we saw. Well, that's not all. When you first load up the game in Year 1, here was the opening, from the Bungie logo all the way up to the title screen. Now in Year 2, here's what happened. This was awesome to me. It clearly shows that Destiny is moving forward, and the adventures we had previously, while important, were not at all the focus anymore. The musical environment that the title screen created showed us what the tone of the expansion was going to be, a week before Oryx's fleet arrived around the rings of Saturn. In the last Destiny video, we heard a lot of different musical themes or motifs, and I'm going to quickly recap them now. On the screen you'll see the main themes from Year 1, and here they are in order from top to bottom. The Destiny Horn Call, the Tritone Melody, the choral motive, and Crota's Bass Blast. Now it's time to add some new ones to the mix, and boy are they prevalent. The first main musical idea in The Taken King represents the royalty of Oryx. He is a king after all, and you'll hear it all throughout the score. I mean, all the time. Everywhere you turn, it's there. I'll be calling it the Oryx Fanfare, and as I'm sure you know, it sounds like this. You recognize the crap out of that, right? The really interesting to me about this short melodic fanfare is that sometimes it develops into something a little more, and sometimes it's just stated in short segments. It's very low and is not complex at all. In fact, the short statement is literally 2 notes, yet those 2 notes are able to evoke a sense of dark royalty somehow. It's impending yet regal. Let's examine this a little bit further. As a composer, when you want to convey something dark, you think low in terms of range and you think low in terms of instrumentation. So taking the clip from the track Regicide, the composers have hit both of these marks. We first hear the low brass, horns, and low strings just dig out the melody from the low basements of their range. We also hear a drone, or a static note, underneath this in the double basses that accent the depth of the line. This will create a dark sound and a dark feeling for the listener. Now, the actual melodic line doesn't move very much. I'd mentioned the opening statement is made up of only 2 notes. Normally, music for royalty or a king will be very fanfare-esque. You'll hear bright trumpets most of the time, but the important thing you'll hear is a very structured rhythm. There's not a lot of syncopation in a fanfare. The rhythms happen on the main beats, not in between them. Well, looking at this dark fanfare, the melody only moves on the main beats. It is very structured and regimented, and you can conduct along to it or move your body or bang your head to it and really feel each note instead of just feeling the major beats. This Oryx Fanfare is so effective at what it does, stating Oryx's presence throughout the game, while still remaining unique and different from what the normal idea of what a fanfare is. Here's a quick supercut of a few of the statements of the fanfare throughout the game. The next main idea is a harmonic one, not a melodic one, meaning it happens in the chord structure and not necessarily in the melody. I'm calling this just the bass motif. It's a 4-note bass melody, and it sort of pivots around the root of the first chord. It sounds like this. Its main focus is as the entire basis for the raid music, and actually finds its way into some other music at times. Listen to these 4 chords again. Now the same 4 chords here from the track The Taken. And then again from Long Live the King. Now in year 2, we start to hear more variety in instrumentation and using instruments in very different ways. The first noticeable difference is the heavy inclusion of electronic sounds and music through the Taken King score. This isn't exclusive to year 2, but it's used way more than it was in year 1. A lot of the music based around the actual Taken race uses electronic sounds in very different ways. Electronics add a really interesting flavor to the music. Most of the time it's as accenting rhythmic ideas and supplying extra emphasis on lower bass notes. My favorite use of this comes in The Sword, which plays after Oryx takes himself at the end of the Regicide mission. The big heavy beats are able to come out way more using very unique sounds that help to accent the chorus and orchestral melodic statement here. They also use a really cool pan effect halfway through it that if you're using headphones you'll pick up on. This is where the music jumps from the right ear to the left ear. Here's just the pan. And here's the full opening in context. The Dark Blade Strike also uses electronics in a very cool way. The synthesized bass sound becomes the main idea, and they're able to make the sound slide from note to note, instead of cleanly moving to each one. Pitch bend is something easily performed on computers, not so much on most orchestral instruments, so this was an excellent use of the technique while still fitting the impending nature of the final battle against Alakul and that incredibly dark circle. Now those aren't the only two examples of electronics used, but I think they're pretty representative, and a good idea of how they can be used in different ways. The other instrumental technique I'd like to point out is the use of the extreme low range of the piano in the Dreadnought patrol music. The cool thing about the lowest range of the piano is that the last few notes are mostly devoid of any type of pitch. I mean, you're literally playing an A, but the sound is so muddy the ear oftentimes can't pick up on the actual note that's being played. Here's an example from my own piano. I'll play a higher A to give you the pitch first, and then the lowest one to show how the pitch gets lost. I also think they're doing something with the strings inside the piano, hitting them with some sort of hammer to create more of an attack on the notes, but that's just my own speculation. Here's the example from the Dreadnought. Most of the music in the expansion is rhythmic and dark, but not quite all of it. In a track called Remembrance that plays in orbit, we hear a beautiful piano and vocal piece that is able to evoke a very somber tone, but not in an aggressive way. I really think the instrumentation is the main factor in that. The piano is supporting the strings with a singular voice soaring above it. It's just stunning. There's an elegance to the simplicity of it. Beautiful music does not have to include the whole ensemble. Here's a bit of Remembrance. Alright, it's throwback time. The composers did a great job of throwing in some of the old Year One music in new ways to give us a sense of nostalgia while still fitting the scene. There's two examples I'm going to show of this. The first one is based around the Cabal. In this expansion, the Cabal have also crashed a ship into the Dreadnought to try and take it out. That doesn't quite work, but the Cabal do exist on the ship, and a few missions are actually based around them. Cabal Breach brings back the main Cabal theme while adding some new melodic things before and after it. Here's just the main Cabal theme from Year One. And here it is as it plays in Year Two. It's a little bit faster and more rhythmic, and the addition of the electronics also moves it forward into Year Two a bit. The second is my favorite. In the storyline, there's a series of missions that require you to stop the Hive from restoring Crota's soul. During these missions, which are stellar by the way, you'll hear the music creeping back from the Dark Below expansion. The bass blast that was Crota's signal returns at the start of missions, and in the mission The Awakening, a fuller arrangement plays when you're out fighting the crystal that contains the soul of Crota. It actually uses a Year One ostinato, or repeating rhythmic phrase, that you hear in the Skolas fight. On the soundtrack it's called Soul of Crota. Now here's that Skolas ostinato as a reminder. Now here it is in Soul of Crota combined with a tritone shift. And of course that beautiful low bass blast that signal you're in a Crota mission. Memories. The Court of Oryx was a neat new addition to the game, and it's an interesting way to bring public events to an area where war stats could never drop. There's a couple of pieces of music that can play here, and the music will loop forever until you defeat the boss or bosses depending on the rune you summon. No matter when you finish it though, the end of the Court of Oryx track will play, sort of summing up the encounter. The other awesome part was that when Thalnak, the Fanatic of Crota, comes out in the antiquated rune encounter, the sword music from Year One comes back. It's awesome. Now even though now you get your own sword, you have to use the sword from the sword bearer. It was a neat way to bring back a raid mechanic into the actual game, and it's still surprising at how so many people have no idea how to do it. Well, I digress. Listen to a little bit of the Court of Oryx. The final mission in the story campaign was wonderful. You take on all of the taken threats such as Bax and Primus that were taken by Oryx, and then make your way into Oryx's final domain. The lead into the Oryx fight is fantastic. After Oryx pretty much invites you in, the Guardian enters a dark hall with a light that streaks across the ground and shoots up the wall and creates the Taken King logo, which then separates, creating a path for you to meet Oryx. The whole scene is very well done, and it gives an impending majesty of what is about to happen. It's the ultimate entrance of Oryx prior to the raid, and the music does it absolute justice. Listen again to the opening of Regicide. Yeah, that's the most impending statements of the Oryx Fanfare we've heard on the soundtrack. Listen, however, to what the music does after this. The music stays rhythmically intense, while not getting any faster. It also takes the melody we've heard and develops it. We hear those two notes from the fanfare in different ways, whether they be different rhythmically, coming in with different intervals, or even extended melodies. This fight, while not terribly hard, really showcases what a great score can bring to a pivotal moment in a game. The end of the fight where you're taken into the darkness dimension brings us to the music you'll find in the Oryx fight in the King's Fall raid. The raid was a monster. I mean, you're fighting hive monsters, so I guess literally, but the raid is long and full of boss encounters that take some time if your team isn't right in sync. The music used in each encounter up to Oryx is found somewhere else in the expansion, but the music for the actual Oryx fight was the best Taken King had to offer. I'd say it's the best in Destiny completely, but when Rise of Iron came out, my opinion on that has changed. Nevertheless, the music for this fight is based completely on the Bass Motif, the chord progression with melodies layered over top of it. The meter shifts back and forth from a 12/8 triplet feel to a 3/4 fast 3 feel seamlessly, and it creates a really cool feel to the fight, heard here. To start off, the Oryx Fanfare plays as Oryx takes the battlefield for the first time, which is pretty neat. Then, through the entire first cycle, you don't get to hear the soaring melody at all. We hear loops of the rhythmic ostinato, which sounds like this. This is what drives the music throughout the entire fight. Now, regardless of whether Oryx shoots bombs or teleports you, the music will go silent after he falls off the stage, and when he reappears, the music comes right in at the spot where the actual melody kicks in, heard here. Now, the melody uses some awesome dissonance to create a ton of tension as it loops back onto itself each time. Dissonance is a lack of harmony among musical notes. I like to think of it as something that clashes just because of proximity. If you've got two notes far apart from each other, the wavelengths aren't going to clash. But if you hit a few notes right next to each other, you do hear a lot of clashing. Just as an example, here's a non-dissonant chord, and then here's a dissonant chord. Now listen to the melody again, especially in that fourth measure, and hear how the dissonance creates tension. As you go through the fight, the music moves into a higher key and adds layers like chorus into the mix. I can't tell you at all what the chorus is saying, but it sounds pretty epic, right? The raid was the highlight musically for me in the Taken King, and of course that's just an opinion, but I felt like an absolute badass during the Oryx fight when things were going well. I also need to mention that you can hear this song called Last Stand in the opening cutscene of the story. It also appears in pieces during the ending fight against Oryx in the story mission Regicide, discussed earlier. There was a lot of music that stayed the same in year 2 as well. The tower played the same tracks, and so did the reef. All of the old missions from year 1 were unchanged musically as well. The Cosmodrome still felt like the Cosmodrome, the Moon still felt like the Moon, Venus still felt like Venus, not counting the Taken Corruptions, of course, which need to go away forever. The added orbit music helped make the game feel a little bit darker, but it was refreshing to hear at times some of the old classics we all know and love. All in all, the music for Destiny's Year 2, The Taken King, created a dark atmosphere of impending doom throughout the story that really changed the way we viewed the Destiny universe. The same thing will happen in Year 3, and Destiny 2, and Year 10, and that's the exciting thing about this game. The world is constantly changing. You'll never be really in Year 1 or 2 ever again, so this heightens the experience while you're actually in it, even if you don't realize it until it's gone. So that'll do it for this episode of The Gamer's Companion to Music. I hope I covered all your favorites this time. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Missed the first video? Check out the GCM on Destiny Year 1 and don't forget to subscribe for more.